Salutations from space, folks. This is Gemini Brett, the Astrolonaut of morethan.astrology.com, and this is Tea Time with Aries. A look at the 2015 Aries moon game. This time to set intentions, to anchor the light of the Aries archetype, and to purge its shadows. We are drinking Runa Wayusa tea with cinnamon for some of that Aries fire, and lemongrass. Wayusa is a plant from Ecuador, a holly plant, and it's an amazing tea. Twice the antioxidants of green tea. It's more caffeine than coffee, but with some other natural stimulants that keep you up once you're up there, so you don't get that coffee crash. One of the slogans of Runa, this American importer of Wayusa tea from Ecuador, is clean energy. And I really recommend you check it out. But before we drink, one for the great warrior Hanuman, warrior of loyalty. Here's to you, and here's to Aries. I need this clean energy now. It's been a long day of me doing my Aries stuff, my full-on commitment, the all-in energy to my personal conquest that's coming up for me this month. Many journeys, many projects. One's going to take me to Washington, D.C., where we find this wild statue in front of the National Archives building, the building that hosts the Declaration of Independence. And independence is a beautiful word for the Aries archetype. This statue, the hardcore warrior holding his Roman helmet and his gigantic sword with his arm wrapped around the fascia. And the inscription reads, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Pretty hardcore. And something for us to consider during this Aries month, which begins Saturday, April 18th, 2015, at 11:56 a.m. Pacific time, at the very last degrees of the Aries sign, 28.5 degrees Aries. So again, we see a new moon the very end of the solar Aries month, and we see how the solar calendar of 12 solar months doesn't really line up with the lunar calendar of 13 lunar months. And as such, while we have this new moon in a cardinal sign, the three remaining principal phases of the moon, first quarter moon, full moon, and last quarter moon, will not be in the cardinal signs like Aries, but will be in the fixed signs. So in this respect, there are three types of signs. Cardinal, the signs that begin the seasons. Fixed signs, the second sign of the seasons, when the energy of the season is fully fixed in. And mutable signs, the third sign of the season as it transitions into the next season. And those of you who have watched these movies before have heard me speak about this, but the shamanic astrology paradigm visioned forth by Daniel Jamario, which in many ways is the stock of my starry stew, sees those mutable signs as a service to spirit, the fixed signs as a service to self-interest, and I prefer to call them a service to self-growth, and the cardinal signs, like this sign of Aries, shamanic astrology calls householders or tradition keepers, but I prefer this term service to others, for I feel it best completes the trinity of service to self-growth and service to spirit, and it very much speaks to the shared intent of these cardinal signs. Aries, which begins spring, Cancer, which begins summer, Libra, which begins autumn, and Capricorn, which begins winter. So Aries as a service to others. Now, other astrologers laugh at me when I say this about Aries, because Aries is said to be the sign of self. Then one of the age-old mantras of the Aries Mystery School is, I am self. And indeed, this crossing of the vernal equinox line when we come out of the waters of the womb, represented by Pisces, through the birth canal into us, into our unique individual spirit. I mean, you could even say the ego, if that doesn't sound like a harsh word to you. You, me, Aries, self. And what's a problem here is that it's often misunderstood as I am selfish. And this is not at all true. I mean, that can be available in the Aries shadow, but it's certainly not a statement of Aries light. And again, I call it a service to others. So when astrologers laugh at me for stating that, I remind them that Aries is the archetype of the warrior. And in the warrior's light, this is a service to other beings. The tribe gladly gives the largest cut of meat, or tempeh if you prefer, to the warrior because they know the warrior needs their strength in order to protect the tribe. And this is why the warrior receives this gift, this tribute. We allow ourselves to receive so that we may be better givers. This is Mother Bear, who knows she must mind her own nutrition to make healthy milk for the cub. This is securing our own oxygen mask before we help the little ones, for they will not survive unless we do. And this word survive, survival, well, this is a word of the Aries archetype. Competition, the conquest, rugged individuality, the pioneering spirit, being able to guide all of our energy into that one thing, that one mountain to summit. As we stake our flag in its peak, the Aries energy, the Aries fire. Yes, Aries is a cardinal sign, and it is a fire sign. The intuition, the will, the spirit. And to me, Aries, as the first fire sign on the wheel of life, indeed the first sign on the wheel of life at all, is the spark of the fire. It's the thing that gets the party started. So Aries, as the warrior, in its light, what are we here to protect? What are we here to defend? Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Is there some beauty to this warrior energy that asks us to protect that which is worth protecting? Rugged individuality. Can we be strong unto ourselves? Can we harness our own fire? Fire is the one element we can share without giving ours away. Can we stoke that fire in our core, in our hara, in our center, and illuminate our torch so others can light their own candle from it? The pioneering spirit, what can we put all of our energy into? These are devotions, intentions to set this month. This month. What are you ready to put your energy into? What is your cause? What is it that you choose to be eternally vigilant about? And while we look to the remaining phases of the moon game to see how these intentions will be challenged and how they will be illuminated and where the wisdom comes in. So we see new moon in Aries, first quarter moon in the fire of Leo, the full moon in Scorpio, and the third quarter moon in Aquarius. The warrior. What is the warrior here to protect? How is the warrior here to serve? And so we speak about Mars, this image very Martian, and Aries said in the traditional systems to be the masculine or diurnal sign of the planet Mars's rulership. Mars, known as Aries to the Greek, has this correlation to the Aries mystery school. The warrior. And now Mars goes through this long dance, this 26-month dance called a synodic cycle. So you've heard me speak a bit about the Venus synodic cycle, most likely. And Mars does this thing too. Venus's is 19 months, 584 days. Almost perfectly, so harmonically. But Mars's, the masculine's, a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more volatile, harder to put our finger on. Changes slightly, but it averages 26 months. And this is a very key time of the Mars synodic dance. The time of the sun dance. As Mars descends into the underworld to be initiated through his trials. Now, what does this mean for Mars to be in the underworld? Well, this means that Mars now has gotten so close to the sun that his light has disappeared into the sun's glare. Shamanic astrology imagines the ancients would have seen this as the planet descending into the underworld when it disappears from the world's stage. And at this time of Aries new moon 2015, April 18th, this has just gone down. Mars falls into the underworld when he is about 15 degrees from the sun. And this is when Mars can no longer be seen. So here on the new moon chart, April 18th, 2015, you can see Mars here in the sign of Taurus, about 13.5 degrees. And the sun and the moon together, new moon in Aries, 28.5 degrees. So just about perfectly 15 degrees away, Mars has descended into the underworld. Meanwhile, Venus is a very bright evening star, high in the western sky. And in fact, she is ascending at this time. I encourage you to connect to this, to watch her bright and beautiful light after sunset in the western sky, and you will notice that over the course of the next couple of moons, she is still getting higher and higher, brighter and brighter, setting later and later after sunset. Now, Venus and Mars were together right around the first degree of Aries on February 20th or 21st of this year, 2015. And since that time, Venus, having already been through her underworld period, September 19th, 2014 to December 5th, 2014, and then she rose in the western sky and gets higher and higher every night. Since she and Mars first conjuncted in the sign of Aries, February 21st, 2015, Venus has ascended. She's getting higher and higher, brighter and brighter. Meanwhile, Mars is descending, moving into the underworld. And shamanic astrology sees this basically as the middle of this long 26 month that Mars exercises during his synodic dance with the sun and the earth. Shamanic astrology, unlike most paradigms that honor these synodic cycles, begins the Mars synodic cycle at Mars opposition, when Mars is directly across from the sun, when Mars is rising as the sun sets. And this happened last year, April 8th, 2014, in the sign of Libra. And shamanic astrology says that at that time, Mars began his quest. The masculine energy that Mars represents began its quest, this investigation of the Libra archetype. At that time, when Mars rises as the sun sets, he is retrograde. Earth is passing Mars. In fact, at that time of opposition between Mars and the sun, It's basically Earth right in between Mars and the Sun. This is like a full Mars, when Mars is as close to the Earth as he gets, as bright as he gets, and this, we say, is when the Mars quest begins. And now here we are, about 13 months later, and Mars descending into the underworld. In the midst of his quest, he's reached maturity, he's gone through many labors, and now he descends into the underworld for initiation. This is Mars's time for Sundance, giving himself to the shamanic death and rebirth, and all for this energy of Libra. And so eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. This Libra energy, liberty, peace, harmony, equality, balanced relationship. And Aries, we know, is the polarity point to Libra, the opposite point on the wheel of life. So Libra, which is about balanced relationship, and Aries, which is about the strength of independence, individuality, and self, they educate one another. Yes, Libra says, don't become so addicted to warrior independence. Don't fall to the scar tissue of the heart and armor yourself from love and partnership. And Aries says, Libra, do not lose yourself to relationship, or the relationship will be lost. These polarities, these opposite signs of the zodiac, they educate one another. And Mars, who has been on this Libra quest, this investigation, now heads into the underworld to be initiated, to have this death and rebirth. How can the warrior learn to release some of that armor and some of that wound so he can open himself up to love? But how can we honor this energy of the warrior and this energy of rugged individuality and the pioneering spirit that reminds us to keep a firm sense of self as we move into relationship? We're sometimes conditioned to believe that independence is the poison to relationship, but in fact, it is the medicine. And the Aries archetype teaches us this. Now, interesting that at this time of Aries new moon, Mars and Mercury, also in the underworld, are in the sign of Taurus. Taurus, the fixed sign of spring. Taurus, beauty, really knowing our own beauty to bring more beauty to the world. Taurus, this energy of sensuality and intimacy that is so alive in the heart. We see the mind, Mercury, and the masculine energy of Mars in the sign of Taurus, but in the underworld at the time of Aries new moon. How can we purge the past pains of the heart, that scar tissue, the guilt of having wounded others, the victim feelings of having been wounded, so that we can release them to the fire and open to a new way of love? And speaking of love, we find Venus in a very interesting place on this chart here at 8 degrees Gemini, very close to the bright magical star Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. And so if you do get out there and watch Venus in the evening sky, you will see that she's very close to a bright red star that's in a V, known as the Hyades, the face of the bull. And this now, through precession of the equinox, has been shifted into the sign of Gemini. And so in the Western tropical systems, we find Venus 8 degrees and 20 minutes Gemini. She's in trine to the North Node in Libra. She's in opposition to Saturn in Sagittarius. And again, Venus has risen from her underworld experience, and she rises and rises. In shamanic astrology, we correlate her 19-month dance, her synodic cycle, to the great Sumerian story of the descent of the queen Inanna into the underworld, and then her ascent. And she's rising now, and every month as the crescent moon embraces Venus in the evening sky, we say she is rising through a gate and retrieving the strength of one of her chakras. So very close to this new moon, on April 21st, you can see in the sunset sky the crescent moon embracing the goddess Venus there. And this is her movement through the 5th chakra, the throat chakra. She's reclaimed the root and the solar plexus, well, the sacral and the solar plexus and the heart, and now she moves up through the throat, really retrieving the truth of communication. And this is one of the gifts of the Gemini archetype, of speech and storytelling and such. So Venus, having been through her underworld experience and retrieving her throat, her communication, she's in this opposition, this alignment to Saturn, the god of wisdom, and the sign of Sagittarius, spiritual truth, feeding her in this alignment of illumination. With this gift, with a challenge that is also a gift, may you speak your truth. In shamanic astrology, we say Venus' synodic cycle, though she's in the sign of Gemini now, that she is on a 19-month quest that began January 17th, 2014, with her heliacal rising, as she's been investigating the mysteries of Capricorn, the counsel of grandmothers, the wisdom of the earth, the elders' intent on preserving that wisdom and tradition for the 7 future generations. This is the feminine quest to retrieve the ability and the space to share her truth and wisdom. And Mars, as he is investigating this Libra archetype, this archetype of partnership, of communication, of diplomacy, of the round table, of honoring all opinions as much as he honors his own, is having a workout to develop the ears that will listen to that feminine wisdom. We have 2 ears and only 1 mouth, you know. So what a beautiful thing that the masculine energy is pursuing interest in this Libra archetype of honoring others' opinions, as the feminine energy is retrieving her gift of sharing her wisdom. And this isn't always easy, this dance. This dance has been divided for a long time, the battle of the yin and the yang. And here we see devotion from the divine feminine and the divine masculine to right that wrong, to understand why it's been, and to bring some peace to it. But eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And so Mars goes now into the underworld, where he will be until August 5th, when he is reborn in the morning sky, going through Sundance, going through his initiations, learning perhaps how he has been wounded, how he has been wounding others throughout the ages, in this sense of not holding space to honor others' opinions. And so we release that now. But it's a few months of Mars gone, of the masculine energy going through this initiation. So if you feel that within, and if you see this in your partner or in your friends, support that. Hold space for that. Be a warrior for that. For eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Venus also in this beautiful trine to the North Node in Libra. Yes, for some time now, since February 2014, the North Node has been in Libra. It's there until November of this year, 2015. The collective consciousness heading towards North Node in Libra, partnership, balance, harmony, equality, peace, relaxing some of the Aries stuff. And so what we relax, what we let go of, what we purge is the shadow of Aries, the unrighteous war, the competitive edge that leads us into need for speed or would ask us to debate simply because it's more interesting than agreeing. That would say to you that brutal honesty is the best way of communication. This is not always true. And sometimes with Aries, when we have all this energy to charge into one thing, we could take that energy right off the cliff. So how can we release that? And how can we release, once again, this overprotected nature, this armor around our hearts? We've been hurt, we've hurt other people. How can we relax that, purge those shadows? How can we set intentions around that at this time of the Aries new moon to open into a beautiful service to others that the true light of the Aries archetype allows in us, to open to this beautiful passion, the spark of the fire that allows us to direct our energy into that one thing that means the most to us. And what is that for you? What is it that you are looking to put your energy into now? What is worth that energy? What is worth your warrior nature? What is worth protecting? So these are the seeds to plant at this time. And there are many alignments we could speak about on this chart, but I think I'm going to forward into the first quarter moon. The time of tension. The seeds that we plant at new moon around the light of the archetypes of Aries, around purging the shadow of the Aries archetype, now at first quarter moon, and in that week that begins April 25th, they sprout. And the archetype where that first quarter moon is found, Leo, in this moon game, guides this archetype of tension to the intentions that were set. So how can Leo, fire, bring tension to Aries fire? Well, Leo, honor, valor, courage, sovereignty, leadership, self-love, creativity. While Aries is the spark, Leo is the roaring flames of the fire. And is Leo then demanding that these intentions we set align themselves to a way of honor and valor? Vigilance, yes, but what is the cause? Is this an honorable cause? And we find the first quarter moon aligned very closely to the asteroid goddess Juno, who is the goddess of relationship, now in Leo, saying true relationship is going to unfold when first I love myself, when it is a relationship of play, honor, valor, courage, sovereignty, these things, and Juno and the moon together also with Jupiter. So at the time of this first quarter moon, first quarter through the moon, but it looks, of course, like a half moon. Take a peek in the sky that day, April 25th, and April 26th, the following day. The moon will be very closely aligned to Jupiter, this beautiful, bright gas giant guru at the top of our skies now at the time of sunset. And so Venus very bright in the west as the sun sets. And then if you look up in east and up a little further, you will see the only light that can rival Venus until the moon gets in the picture. And at this time you will see the moon together and Jupiter, this other brilliant, beautiful, bright planet shining forth from the sign of Leo. Self-love, honor, play, creativity. They say Leo needs a stage, Leo needs the spotlight. I say no, the stage needs Leo because Leo is the spotlight, the illuminated one who has sparked their own fire so brightly we can each ignite our own candles from its flames. But this is the week of tension. Do we need the stage? Are we taking that Aries all-in energy just to force ourselves to the front of the line to be seen? Is our fight one of honor? The true Leo is the king whose horse is first in line for a battle that is actually worth fighting. And of course, a battle that is worth fighting is a battle for self-love. And as Jupiter and the moon gather, huddled together around Juno, the asteroid goddess of relationship again, tension comes in. Have you been so devoted to your independence? Have you put up that armor that would keep you from coming into the beautiful light of true relationship that is illuminated when we also, and perhaps first, love ourselves? Moon, Juno, Jupiter, all aligned in a beautiful sextile to Venus in Gemini, on one side and in sextile to the Libra North Node on the other, while Libra is rising, at least here on the West Coast. And in opposition to another asteroid goddess, Ceres. Ceres, nurturing, and the mother, the divine mother, Demeter she was in the Greek, perhaps Isis in Egypt. And in the sign of Aquarius, freedom. And so here again, in this dynamic dance at this time of the feminine wisdom coming forth and the masculine going through his underworld initiation to develop the ears to hear that wisdom while retaining the truth of his own communication to share his, so that balance could be found for freedom of the feminine principle and relationship and the fires and beautiful lion I am roar of self-love and play. Aligned very strongly in a square, of course, to the sun, since it's first quarter moon, moon square sun, but here moon with Juno and Jupiter all in this alignment. The sun at 5 degrees 27 minutes Taurus on April 25th, and approaching a very important place of the zodiac that comes to us at Beltane. And so we look to the full moon, the time of illumination, of flowering this month that begins on May 3rd at 8:42 p.m. Pacific, with the moon at 13.5 degrees Scorpio. Interesting. So the illumination to Aries this year comes from the archetype of Scorpio. Now in the traditional systems, it is said that Mars is the ruler both of Aries, his diurnal, his masculine sign, and of Scorpio, his nocturnal, his feminine sign. So how interesting that we begin this quest in the archetype of Aries and setting intentions of the true warrior, and then it's illuminated by the archetype of Scorpio. Sorcery, magic, shamanism, the awakened human heart, service to self-growth through really bringing forth our life force energy so we can share that to others and bring them to life, bring them to light by not fearing the shadows. I've heard it said that Aries is Mars as samurai and Scorpio is Mars as ninja. I kind of like that. And so some of this illumination perhaps we're seeing is saying, are we strong enough to go into our own shadow and to move through it to find our light on the other side? Mars in the underworld having his initiation, and the moon in Scorpio saying, yes, good, go into that shadow, for in that shadow you will be reborn and you will come forward illuminated for this. But Scorpio reminding us of the ways of the heart, right? Again, are we armored in such a way that we can't explore passion and excitement, desire, these important and beautiful aspects of the Scorpio archetype that is very relational through this need to connect passionately to others. So again, releasing the independence to come alive in the way of the heart. We see that again and again and again. At this time, Mercury, now in the sign of Gemini, is in this opposition to Saturn. Mercury in the underworld, the trickster himself. Mercury actually at this time will have just been reborn from the underworld experience and will be just showing up as a visible evening star. So like Venus, who had come forth from the underworld, in the sign of Gemini there's some youth and some play. Mars says, good, yes, you've been reborn, but Saturn says this, let's make sure we're serious and practical about this, that this new dream, that these new stories to tell Gemini can be grounded in such a way that they will be heard, and that they have a spiritual truth to them. This is Sagittarius, right? May 3rd. So this is 2 days after the current celebration of Beltane, May Day, dancing around the maypole. And there's an astrological and astronomical significance to that date. It's actually not entirely aligned with the astrological placement, but it is called a cross quarter. Now we know we have vernal equinox at 0 Aries, summer solstice at 0 Cancer, autumnal equinox at 0 Libra, winter solstice at 0 Capricorn, the beginning of the seasons with the initiation of the cardinal signs. But between these points of equinox and solstice, and between solstice and equinox, we find what are known as the cross quarters. So in the season of spring, which begins with vernal equinox, 0 degrees Aries, and ends with summer solstice, 0 degrees Cancer, there is a midpoint. 90 degrees of Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, these spring signs. The midpoint of them is 15 degrees Taurus. And this is the astrological cross quarter. And it's around this time of Beltane. In fact, it would seem that Beltane should be celebrated not on May 1st, but on May 5th, when the sun does actually reach that cross quarter point of 15 degrees Taurus. It seems to me that this slip is somewhat a product of the shift from the Gregorian calendar, well, from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar some time ago. I'm actually very deeply investigating those mysteries now and have not found the answer, but I have found some better questions. So Beltane, the cross quarter, the middle of spring, the flowers are blooming. What a wonderful thing at this time of flowering and illumination to the archetypes set at the Aries new moon. And it's saying, great, you've devoted your energy to that one thing, to that mountain to climb. You know what's worth fighting for and worth protecting. And now, let it flower. Fertility. What are you giving birth to this year? Is that energy of that seed you planted has sprouted and now the flowers are on the tree. Come and have a sniff. And so connect to others at the time of Beltane. This is one of the great old ceremonies. This was actually the beginning of the Druid calendar at the Taurus cross quarter. And bonfire ceremonies and celebrating the flowers and the energy of fertility. That's the thing. I'm heading out to Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio on a bit of a pilgrimage to hold ceremony with some new friends there and to connect these ancient sites, Serpent Mound and Fort Ancient and the Newark earthworks. And I'm very excited about that. And I hope you too will celebrate that Taurus cross quarter either at Beltane, May 1st, maybe at Scorpio full moon here, May 3rd, maybe May 5th, when we do reach the sun at 15 degrees Taurus, the cross quarter point. Maybe the whole month, or for your whole lifetime, bringing forth new life. For those of you in the Washington, D.C. area, I will be running a tour into the astrological mysteries and the mythological mysteries of Washington, D.C., as I mentioned earlier, on Saturday, May 9th, during this week of illumination of this Aries month. And the weekend before, again, I'll be near Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio. So if you're on those parts, please come join me. Both events are absolutely free, and you can find out more on the events tab of my website, morethan.astrology.com. I would love to see you on Earth and not only here in space. The Scorpio moon, full moon, will be in a very strong trine to Vesta, in Pisces. Vesta, the sacred flame. And I love that energy. You know, it's also saying that let's make sure what we are here to put all of our energy to, what we are here to protect, is something of spirit. There's something of the vision of merging, the connection of one heart, and something that is the dream. And I spoke in my last talk about the warrior learning to purge this shadow that would ask him just to shake others awake, and instead to honor the state of the dreamer. The sleeper is the dreamer. And so perhaps instead of trying to shake the sleepers awake, we are here to protect their sleep and to give them that space to really have that dream, so that when they awake fully rested, they can bring it forth to the world. And so I love this trine from the Scorpio full moon of illumination of this Aries moon to Vesta, the sacred flame in the sign of Pisces, the spiritual waters. The moon will also be in strong sextile to Pluto, retrograde in Capricorn. And so there's this sextile dance between Moon in Scorpio, Pluto in Capricorn, and Vesta in Pisces. Neptune and Chiron kind of getting in on that mix as well from the Pisces sign. Pluto in strong Earth trine to the Sun in Taurus. And I don't want to get us lost in the realms of astro-babble here, but Pluto in Capricorn's been really initiating us, no doubt about it. Certainly the Uranus-Pluto square, which is still pretty strongly aligned, has been this dynamic statement of our recent times, asking for our evolution, our revolution, our growth, revolution of self, occupy yourself, and Plutonic death and rebirth to the false structures so the true structures can come forth. And so perhaps all of that energy will also come into this illumination this time. Again, what is worth protecting? What is worth putting all of our energy into? Eternal vigilance is the price of what? Of liberty. So let us be free. And Scorpio, full moon, let us free our hearts for the absolute authentic experience and expression of our deepest passions, desires, and excitement. Venus in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini, let us be playful and youthful in love and in the expression of our truth. But let us make sure, again, Saturn and Sagittarius, that there is structure to that there is cause to that. And so the last quarter, the final phase of this Aries moon game, the week that begins with the moon at 20 degrees and 26 minutes Aquarius. The waning half moon, 90 degrees from the sun, which at that time will be 20 degrees Taurus. Mars, still in the underworld, 29.5 degrees Taurus, about to move into Gemini. And Mars, there at the edge of Taurus, now making opposition to Saturn in Sag. So Saturn in Sagittarius has been an interesting player in every principal phase of this moon's game. At the time of new moon, Saturn was opposite Venus in Gemini. At the time of full moon, Saturn in Sagittarius opposite Mercury in Gemini. And at the time of the third quarter moon, the time of wisdom and integration, Saturn in opposition to Mars in Taurus. Mars in his underworld experience, in his quest, in his Sundance. And Saturn saying, yes, there is truth to that. You will find a new structure, a new spiritual structure. Release yourself. And come to me, find the fire that is Sagittarius, the third fire sign. So Aries is the spark Leo, the roaring flames, and Sagittarius, the mutable sign of the fire, the service of spirit in the fire, is the smoke that travels far and wide and rises to the heavens. And so as Mars is being initiated in the underworld, Saturn is saying, there is wisdom in this. And so I align to you at this time of fruiting and integration and wisdom. Well, the moon aligns through square to Sun and in a T-square to Jupiter. Juno conjunct in Leo. So there's a beautiful marriage here. Juno, mythologically, was the wife of Jupiter, the asteroid goddess of relationship, connecting to Jupiter, Dharma, guru, teacher, expansion, opportunity in Leo. A statement of playful relationship. And in this year that I've talked about before, of the 3 Venus-Mars conjunctions, the first February 21st, the next one coming on August 31st after Mars will have been reborn in the morning sky after his underworld journey. And the last on November 2nd, 2015, a time this year where I'm saying we have this energy of rewriting our relationship to relationship. And I feel this month is very much about that because, again, Aries, independence, educates Libra, partnership. And so in the initiations this month, in our devotions, in our attentions this month to the light of Aries and to purging its shadow, releasing that which would keep us from connecting to peace and beauty and harmony and equality and balanced relationship and partnership, diplomacy, communication, this Libra stuff, but maintaining the fire, the spark of pioneering spirit and rugged individuality that would say, we don't get lost to that relationship. We can maintain the truth and the beauty of self. And so at this time of the last quarter moon, the time of wisdom, Venus has ingressed into the sign of Cancer. Love in the sign of caring and nurturing. And well, perhaps the masculine energy is really going to benefit from some of that support from the caring nature of the feminine, who's already been through her underworld experience and is ascending. At this point has regained the throat chakra of communication. Can she communicate some of that caring and compassion to the masculine who is in the midst of his initiation, his underworld experience? And the final thing I think I'll share about this is Mercury. 10 degrees, about 11 degrees Gemini. Very close to that bright star, Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, where Venus was at the time of new moon. Or I should say is about to be, since I'm recording this on April 17th and new moon is tomorrow. This is a very important part of the sky. Aldebaran, one of the Bedouin stars, the magical stars. And when Mercury reaches this point, really on May 8th, he will be at maximum elongation, the highest he gets in the evening sky. It's very hard to see Mercury. This is one of the reasons why he's known as the trickster. But this is a great opportunity to do that around this time of April 8th to April 12th in here, to really connect to the trickster, twinkling light, only twinkling because he's always in the lowest parts of the horizons, which we have well decorated with our pollution and such. And there we find Mercury. And one of his natural signs, Gemini, the trickster gift through the end of this quest that he's been undertaking since he last went direct. And one of my teachers, Gary Caton, who you can find at dreamastrologer.com, a very cool guy, he's really been talking about intentionally working with the Mercury retrograde cycles. Now, Mercury will not go retrograde until next month, in the Taurus month. Shortly after Taurus new moon, Mercury will have his second retrograde of this year. But this point, at the maximum elongation, the western sky, is in the same degrees of the zodiac as his retrograde conjunction to the sun, which will come to us at the end of May during the Taurus month. And then when he's reborn from that underworld experience and reaches maximum elongation in the morning sky, that also happens at these same degrees of the zodiac. So in this month, Venus started here at the bright star Aldebaran in the early degrees of Gemini, or about 10 degrees Gemini, the first decan of Gemini. And now at the last quarter, here's Mercury, and in a place where he will be 3 times this year. And so really honing into that place of the sky, a place where the Lakota wisdom calls the sacred hoop, one of the places between the twins and the bull in the night sky where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic, the zodiac, the path of the sun and the planets. And it's said to be where our souls come from. So really tapping into Venus at the time of the new moon, and into Mercury, who is seldom visible but will be at the time of the last quarter moon, will guide your consciousness into this very sacred space. And in this time of maximum elongation of Mercury, as he's preparing for his next Mercury retrograde cycle, it's a really wonderful time to set some intentions for how you are opening yourself to the shift of mind that the Mercury retrograde cycle allows for us, opening the other side, the superconscious realms. And so Mercury, at this time of the last quarter moon, in Aquarius, freedom, right? As we release the warrior nature that doesn't serve to connect to its truth, we find freedom. Right? Drop that armor that's been surrounding our heart to protect ourselves or to protect others, whatever. Liberate ourselves from that. Liberty and eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, you know. So the freedom and the revolution of Aquarius is the gift, the wisdom, the last quarter for those of us who stand true to the intentions of the beauty of the Aries archetype. And we find Mercury supporting this in this grand air trine to the North Node that Venus trined at new moon. Now Mercury does, and trining on the other side, Ceres in Aquarius. Freedom of nurturing. They align in what's called a kite. North Node in Libra, Ceres in Aquarius, Mercury in Gemini to Jupiter conjunct Juno in Leo. This is this kite form you see here. And it's all in a sense pointing towards Aquarius. And freedom, the nurturing of freedom. So perhaps this is the nurturing energy that Venus in Cancer is here to help give to Mars in the masculine, as he's deep in the underworld to really purge the Aries shadow and connect to the truth of the Aries light, so that we can all guide ourselves forward into this beautiful investigation of harmony, balance, equality, peace, partnership, right relationship, diplomacy, communication, and liberty. For eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Thank you for sharing tea with me and Aries. I wish you a beautiful month, and I will see you in space, and perhaps in the underworld. This is your friendly Astrolonaut, Gemini Brett, signing off. And thank you to Runa for this tasty Wayusa. We'll need some clean energy and strength this month.